Hello friends, welcome back. Let us continue with the discussion of leadership development. In the previous discussion, I discussed about techniques, 3 techniques of leadership development, that is networking, 360-degree feedback and executive coaching. Today I will discuss about another 3 techniques of leadership development, that is mentoring. It is a formal process in which employees receive help, maybe at personal or professional level, from more experienced colleagues in the organizations as a means of helping them develop their careers. Any new member who joins the organization is so new that it is difficult for him to understand the ropes of the job, that how that job has to be performed. This also requires some informal interactions with the members who are already committed to the organization for so many years, who are attached to the organization in so many years, for last so many years, and how they have also performed the same job. So, when it comes to taking any action or decision regarding a particular action, then sometimes new employees do direct themselves to the experienced employee and how they assist those new employees at informal level to take up any decision and how that job has to be performed. This process is known as mentoring. It is a process where mentors also may come from outside the organization, but such relationships are more likely to take the form of coaching. Now, here a thin line difference exists between mentoring and coaching. When it comes to mentoring, it is an informal process based on absolutely informal interaction with any senior or experienced employee and superior superordinate, and how they tend to assist young employees to take up any particular decision or how to perform their job. But if this mentoring is being processed outside the department, then such kind of mentoring becomes coaching, because that coaching is very professional in nature and it is very formalized in structure. Because any mentor outside the organization is definitely not going to be the part of the organization. So, any member outside the organization will only help any organizational member who is helping that person based on some formalized structure. That means, formalization is there in coaching, but when it comes to mentoring, any employee can approach any experienced employee irrespective of the position in the hierarchy, and how people take up those ideas forward to take up their job, to perform their job effectively. This approach that is mentoring is unlikely to include a formal assessment of a leader's strengths and limitations, and tends to focus on personal and professional support. There is no formal assessment in mentoring. Any employee would just approach any experienced employee already working for that organization, and they would just indulge in different kind of interaction, so that they can find solution to their problem, the right decision making to implement, and ultimately they learn the ropes of the job. This is mentoring, which is informal in nature. There is interaction and there is productive interaction between the experienced person and the employee, and how they find support through the mentors. So, mentoring is something which does not require any formalized structure. There is no appointment of any such kind of mechanism. Coaching can be a mechanism which is executed in the organization, but mentoring is something that any new member can approach any person for any kind of assistance or help in a very informal manner. This is mentoring. But at the same time, some potential problems also exist in mentoring. Like that, we have talked about executive coaching, where if any one member is put on coaching, then that person can feel embarrassed, and ultimately all the members are put on equal footing. This is the drawback. Now, similarly, mentoring also has some certain drawbacks, that if any member becomes associated with the member for a longer period of time, then they fail to take up their own decisions and they completely depend on the mentors. They comply with what mentors must have done, and they also perform the same decision in a similar fashion. This actually limits the potential of decision making of the new members, and they fail to provide any new drive or idea to the organizations. So, potential problem with mentoring is that protege, that the individuals helped by the members may become so highly connected to their mentors that they fail to think independently. It takes lot of time for them to come out of that aura of that relationship and make their own decisions. Soon what is mentored employees does it just what the mentor would have done, although this is beneficial, but at the same time it can also be potentially limiting, leading to a narrowness of thought. The person who is being mentored fails to think with open mindedness and broadly, because they are so much into mentoring, being mentored by the mentee, that they tend to fail about decision making in a very open mindedness. This is the drawback. Thus, the problem is especially likely to occur in the case of executive coaching, because individuals make important decisions may fear straying from tried and true solutions of their mentors. Now, they also fear at the same time that what if they take a different decision, and how the mentors will also react to their decision making. Thus, whenever decision making is required, the new members tend to provide a fresh idea, or the organizations are denied a fresh idea through the new employees, as they are heavily influenced by the mentors that the less seasoned executive might be able to provide. So, these are the drawbacks of mentoring. At one time it is very much useful that people learn, new members learn to take how to take effective decisions. At the same time, they also fail to take decisions in a way with a broad mindedness, open mindedness, and they become very narrowed when in their thinking to execute. In fact, they are fearful that how people will react to their open mindedness. This is mentoring. The other is job assignment. This is one way, another tool for leadership development, where people are being assigned different positions irrespective of their job to gain on the job experience. Any employee who has been given a particular designation and set of duties to perform, but at the same time they are also being given some other responsibility in different form, so that they learn to experience how problems do exist and how they can be solved. When they are exposed to different kind of job situations, that helps them to deal with them in very effective manner, and that leads to leadership development. So, job assignment is another effective way of training leaders by assigning them to positions that allow them to gain on the job experiences. There are companies who intentionally assign personnel to relatively unfamiliar positions in other groups, so that they can broaden their experiences by developing new areas of familiarity. They are already holding their positions, but at the same time the company would also shift them to another department with some another job roles, with some other assignments, and how they tend to get exposed to different kind of decision making patterns. This technique is known as job assignment. For example, Coca-Cola company, they transferred more than 300 professionals and managerial employees from the United States to facilitate facilities abroad for 1 year in an effort to develop leadership skills before returning them home to assume new leadership positions. So, it is an organization's open mindedness that once an employee has been appointed at a particular designation, then what else the same employee can do beyond that. It is about transcending employees. It is they are crossing their or expanding or pushing their boundaries to new roles and capacities that transform them or develop their leadership abilities. That leads to leadership development. It is not that any employee who has joined any marketing department is only performing a specific duty of marketing a product. Maybe that employee can also be assigned some different roles in different capacities that expand their boundaries to take up new leadership role. This is job assignment, and it is not only about one company. every organization does the same. For example, Procter and Gamble, they have also engaged in these kind of techniques to enhance the leadership capabilities of employees. So, that gives them an idea or a clear picture of the prospective leaders to positions at foreign affiliates for a period of 1 or 2 years. Within that period of 1 or 2 years, the employees get that exposure to new assignments and situations in a way that they have a broader perspective about decision making and roles. Thus, job assignments serves developmental functions, and at the same time they provide they are the kind of opportunities that make learning possible. So, learning new things in new roles, having a background role, but learning again new skills in new role is the most important focus of job assignment. So, these jobs give newly developing leaders opportunities to try out new things or roles with different approaches that can determine what works for them. So, it is not only about leading a role in one position, it is about leading multiple roles in different positions at one time and how it develops leadership qualities. This is another technique, that is job assignment. In other words, they should be given the latitude to try different approaches even if they fail, and the organizations must prepare themselves that those failures are inevitable. Since organization, the authority has already exposed them to different new positions. So, the organizations must prepare themselves about those inevitable failures and how the similar individual will evolve out of those problematic situations with new creative ideas and more capacity to lead the role in very effective manner, right. And the next is action learning. Much of the learning that takes place when we are in a classroom, we learn something in any training room or in training, we think that we are expert now to gain that expertise. But when we are out of that classroom, we tend to forget everything, or we tend to revert to our old ways of performing the task. This will not work out in long run, because when we are in classroom, we have a different set of training, we learn set of different kind of skills to enhance our performances, right. But as soon as we are out of that classroom, we are back to normal or typical way of performing our job roles. This creates a discrepancy in identifying the old skills and new skills that any new employee has earned or learned during that training session. Just to avoid such kind of complications for training, organizations turn to another process, that is action learning. Action learning is a continuous process of learning and reflection that is supported by colleagues and that emphasizes getting things done. Now, in this kind of technique, the idea is, the focus is that organizations tend to expose employees after giving them training to the real time problems. It is not only in hypothetical situation like we do in 360-degree feedback assessment centers that we expose them to role playing exercises. Rather, in action learning, after giving them training, they are being exposed directly to the real time problems and situations and how they deal with it. As soon as they are being exposed to different kind of learning, the training that they already have, they tend to use it, and that completes the agenda of action learning, that they are into the real problem and how they are using that new set of skills to resolve those issues and problems in any organization. Therefore, the underlying assumption of action learning is that leaders develop most effectively when they are working on real time organizational problems. When they are executing, when they are implementing that learning in real life, that will give them the real exposure that how to take decisions, how to execute any decision, how to face the challenges that they encounter while making any decision, and ultimately they develop that capacity to perform any role in a leading situation. Citibank was one of the first company to implement this technique of action learning, and they took certain steps to identify the whole process. So, what they did? They identified the issues through the head of the units and how it has affected Citibank performance. That is the first step, identifying the issues. Then participants were selected from throughout the world based on thorough review of their talents. Now, once those problems were identified, experts were also identified globally that who can resolve those problems. A 3-day orientation session was held off-site in which team building skills were also practiced. Now, problem was identified, experts were also identified. Ultimately, the employees reached a situation where team building skills were practiced based on those problems that was faced by Citibank. At the same time, the next step was that for 2 to 3 weeks, data were collected about effective banking practices from both inside and outside the Citibank. That means the leaders within the organization, they also opened up with the practices they are following to solve the problem, and they also took the feedback and they took all the knowledge information from the outer sources, external sources or experts, that how the problem can be identified or solved based on certain banking practices. Now, once these practices were identified, they were analyzed in a very systematic manner and were recommended to the Citibank itself. Findings were presented to area heads of the CEOs in 90-minute settings, and debriefing was also done with the coach. Now, ultimately what happened, when all the knowledge information was collected by the experts within the organization, the coach actually identified all the practices, discussed with the CEOs, and they focused on the recommendations, team process and individual development opportunities. So, therefore, all the members of the organization who were dealing, they tend to identify and deal the real time problem based on the debriefing sessions, that what practices have been recommended, what practices have been declared as redundant, and how team processes and have been restructured and different opportunities were created so as that problem can be resolved. And after 1 or 2 weeks, senior managers followed up and made decisions regarding the various recommendations. Now, in each and every step, 8 steps, all the employees were exposed to different kind of real time situations, not only real time problem, but real time situations where every employee was also interacting with the outside experts of the organization, having discussions, learning all the new and old practices, what to include and what to exclude pertaining to the problem. That was a real time exposure of the employees, which helped them to identify which practice to be included and ultimately enhance their decision making skill. When decision making skill is enhanced, then definitely this actually enhances leadership skills or leads to leadership development. It is not only about Citibank. Action learning has been used by different organizations such as General Electric with an idea to develop new markets. Again, step by step procedure while including members or expertise outside the organization, Aramark to promote cross culture opportunities, Shell Oil to alter perceptions of companies' financial strength. Following a typical financial strategies can become stagnant, and the organization fails to receive profits. How those practices or financial practices are being revised or reviewed, that is the major option, that is action learning. Pushing oneself into new situation, real time situations, and then understanding the problem. And the US Army to share lessons from battlefield experiences. For establishing any strategy, what our soldiers do experience in the field in that moment will give a clear picture to the army officers. Gave a clear picture to US Army officers that what is more better for the other officers in the battlefield. This is the significance of action learning, right. So, ultimately the point is that when we are talking about action learning, it is not only about learning the skills, it is about practicing those skills in real life situations. Now, when real life situations are being encountered, then it expands the employees' orientation, where they also tend to transcend the boundaries and then experience decision making or problem solving solutions, right. So, these are the another three techniques that have discussed as techniques for leadership development. All right. Next comes the ethical angle to leadership development. What we discussed in form of various techniques of leadership development, how those techniques must be ethically correct, that is also very important, because those techniques have a very profound impact on an individual's behavior. So, social scientists have identified that these techniques have the ability to promote authentic leaders and possess 4 particular qualities that contribute to their effectiveness. It is not only about organizational performance or employee performance, it is also about that how these techniques impact an individual employee while transforming them into authentic and moral or ethically correct leaders, and how these techniques can be helpful in doing so. So, the first impact is about self awareness, the extent to which people are aware of their own strengths and weaknesses and also understand their own emotions and personalities. So, once any leadership development technique is been implemented, then how it impacts an individual as a leader in form of aware of oneself. This is also a positive aspect. So, the aspect is that these leadership development techniques will help to transform people into morally correct leaders, authentic and morally correct leaders, which leads to high levels of self awareness. So, this can be developed through 360-degree feedback. It is not only about performance, it is an impact that when a person tends to understand his strengths and weaknesses and learn to understand the strengths and weaknesses and emotions of the other person and oneself, then it transforms a person in a very continuum process, where not only performance is being enhanced, employees and individual is also being enhanced. So, this awareness can be developed by using 360-degree feedback, and the idea is that gaining insight into how we are viewed by others or perceived by others, it becomes possible for people to discover the inconsistencies between the ways we see ourselves and how others see us. So, the discrepancy can be easily identified, and how people tend to bridge those inconsistencies in a very clear cut fashion by accepting one's own pitfalls and understanding the other person's level as well. Thus, focusing on this can help people derive their own values and beliefs, and it becomes a means of identifying strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes we tend to derail our own values in the whole process of enhancing the performance. But as soon as 360-degree feedback is been conducted, then a person also tends to understand, employee tends to understand himself as an individual, that what are his inconsistencies and how he or she can improve. This is ethicality angle in terms of self awareness. The other is unbiased processing, the degree to which individuals are capable of judging and accepting their positive and negative qualities in a very objective manner, and unbiased processing may be developed by using assessment centers. For example, in any role playing exercises, how a person in a hypothetical situation tends to take up the role, and when the person fails to perform that role, he tends to understand that what skills he is lacking and what will help him to develop. As soon as the person tries to identify those lackings and accept those lackings, then this is the process of unbiased processing, which is very much possible through assessment centers. So, it has been recommended that people being trained to participate in assessment centers, they take part in experiential exercises like role playing, and they tend to gain insight about themselves. and various roles, they can easily identify and understand that whether they fit into the role well or not, and they accept if they fit in, and they also accept if they do not fit in. So, this helps a person to enhance or identify his own position within the organization. Therefore, analyzing these dialogues with the help of others in attendance allows people to learn unbiased information about themselves, because they tend to get a real time feedback. They are not getting any feedback from the another person, but since they are role playing any role, any situation, then they tend to interact with their own inconsistencies, and they accept in a very unbiased manner. This is unbiased processing. The other is authentic behavioral acting, the ability to act in ways that are consistent with personal values and preferences instead of ones designed merely to get others to respond positively. Authentic behavior or acting may be developed by using coaching or mentoring. When people are being coached or they are being mentored, they tend to identify the other person with a clear picture that how the person has responded to the situation in a very correct manner. This helps them to imbibe those patterns in a very straightforward manner. They learn those patterns in a very objective manner, because they see those mentors and coaches in a way that they are responding in natural fashion, which is more authentic, and they also imbibe or learn that authenticity in their day to day exercises. So, authentic behavior can be developed through coaching or mentoring. People who have inherent experience has a potential, being coached has a potential to observe role models, that how good they are behaving, how good they are at behaving in different kind of situations, and how that behavior has a deep impact on that situation in form of outcome. They learn how to react, they learn how to handle any tough situation, and how they have their own values. They develop their own values while observing the mentors and the coaches. This is authentic behavioral acting. For example, any authentic leader such as the mentor or the coach may be paired with an aspiring leader, that is the trainee or the protege, and allowing the trainee to observe what the authentic leader is doing and the beneficial reactions that result. Now, in the same time, there is also ambiguity, because the trainee is new, he is ambiguous, but at the same time when he is being attached, connected to the coach or the mentor, that ambiguity fades away with the gradual process of interaction, and the protege or the training tends to understand the different ways to deal with the problems in a very practical manner. As soon as that practicality is being assumed, immediately the person also tends to understand how it has impacted the outcome. This is authentic behavioral acting, where authenticity is being developed, that again transforms an employee as an authentic leader. And the other is relational authenticity, the ability to share information about oneself, developing close and trusting relations with others who recognize both good and bad in them. So, relational authenticity can be developed by using 360-degree feedback. This is characterized by openness and truthfulness. Once assessment is being done, people tend to share information about themselves and others, and immediately they tend to understand the difference between right and wrong. As soon as they develop this difference of right and wrong about oneself, they also tend to receive some useful information in form of assessment, because the other person has already worked with you for so long, and he or she must be knowing what exactly you are. As soon as this assessment is being done in a very structured manner in form of feedback, this emerges as a way to develop different kind of norms and values within a person that can transform a person to take up any leadership position. So, this is relational authenticity, because any person who has evaluated you must have worked with you for so long, and he knows better what exactly a person you are, As soon as we tend to get those responses in form of assessment and evaluation, we tend to identify that the other person is more true to us, and this creates an relational authenticity. So, relational authenticity is another aspect of leadership development. So, when we are talking about the ethical angle that leads to through leadership development, then any authentic leader or morally correct leader can be produced through self awareness, through unbiased processing, authentic behavioral acting and relational authenticity. So, these are the leadership development techniques which can lead to transform any employee into a moral leader or authentic leader. So, that is all for this discussion. Thank you so much.